Welcome back to the Liberating Generations podcast. I'm trying to be my best host here.
We'll keep going.
I'm Regan Claire, and this is my amazing, beautiful, wise mother, Dr. Keesha. In this episode, we are going to dive into what people have told us is their favorite podcast episode to date. We're giving the people what they want. We're talking about the Enneagram.
Well, yeah, we're going to take a deeper dive into the Enneagram, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wonder what Ennea type that just was. That just introduced us.
I don't know. It was a bit of an out-of-body experience, this one, actually.
All right. Well, the first Enneagram podcast episode that we did, we just went through the 9 types, what the Enneagram is. So for those of you that haven't listened to that one and don't have any idea about what we're even talking about when we say Enneagram, maybe listen to that one first. That's 1.0. This is 2.0.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're diving into the 9 types on the Enneagram, the Ennea types. And there's this beautiful understanding that we have different instinctual types that go with each of these 9 types. So there are 3 of these instinctual types, and they each have a goal that they want to have met, because remember that the Enneagram is your false self. It's not who you are. It's the personality that was built to protect your innocent psyche in response to events from childhood and what you got reinforced when you were a kid. And also there's some wisdom that it's part of your astrological makeup of what you brought in for the mission and purpose and goals that you had for this lifetime.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, there are these 3 subtypes of each of the 9 types. So now we're expanding the Enneagram into 27 instead of just 9.
So buckle up, sit tight, grab some popcorn and a notepad.
I'll have to come up with a name for this one. All right, so the 3 subtypes are, I'm enjoying her, by the way.
You like her?
Yeah, yeah, radio personality Regan.
Radio personality Regan. we do need to name her, though.
Well, I think we just did.
Okay.
So the 3 subtypes are self-preservation, often called self-pres, social subtype, and the 1-to-1, which is also called the sexual subtype. And one of the things that's true about the 3 subtypes is we usually have a mixture of all 3, just like in Ayurvedic medicine, you're a mixture of all 3 doshas. You're not just one, but there might be a more command center post that you operate from in different times of your life in relationship to different relationships that you're in. I know I have shifted depending on who I'm in a relationship with and what's going on in my life. But there's a pull toward one of them usually. So self-preservation focuses attention on and shapes behavior around issues related to, as you might guess, survival and material security. And it will change and shift according to the Ennea type that is your command center. So this will have different energy around it, around resources, avoiding danger, wanting a sense of structure, in order to feel like you have a good sense of well-being in your world. Okay. All right. So then social, I am usually called a social 2. That's my, right.
And I'm a self-preservation 2.
Right. And so we'll talk about when we get to the 2, how that shapes out in terms of the differences between how we manifest as 2s in our false selves.
Right.
Yeah. So social focuses attention on and shapes behavior around issues that have to do with belonging and recognition and relationships in social groups. And again, it's going to depend, the energy of it will depend on the specific Enneagram type. So this will be, being included, recognized in the group or community, how much power is being held inside that community, and we'll talk a little bit about what all this means. And the 1-to-1 or sexual focuses attention and shapes behavior around issues related to quality and status of relationship more on a 1-to-1 level. Yeah. And again, it will also depend on the Ennea type as far as what energy comes forward. So this is like sexual connection, interpersonal attraction, and bonding, right?
Yep.
Forming those one-to-one connections. So one of the things that we did not talk about last time was the passion of the type and the lookalikes. We did talk a little bit about that, how a warm 6 looks an awful lot like a 2.
Right.
And we didn't talk about we have 54 subtypes. So we're going to go deeper into that later in another session, another episode.
I think that's probably best.
Yeah. So we're just going to kind of stick with these 3. And then there's a term that will come up in this discussion today called the counter type. So each Ennea type inside of these subtypes has a counter type. Okay. So let's start with 1.
Let's do it.
All right. The 1 is the perfectionist, right? The passion of this type, which you could also think about as the vice, is anger. Yeah. So each of the 3 subtypes then has to do with anger getting channeled into different drives, whether it's perfecting self, right? Perfecting another person or perfecting a social group, like the environment, right? And so self-preservation 1s are perfectionists who try to make themselves and the things they do more perfect. So it's more
self-centered.
Well, and also I see a lot of self-preservation 1s in my practice trying to be better people.
Right.
Yeah. And they often
trying to be healthier.
Exactly. You're trying to reverse their autoimmune disease, do it right.
Right.
Yeah. Social 1s are perfect in that they believe they know the right way to be.
Right. And then everyone else should be like them.
Exactly.
Right.
And they want to model that for you.
Yes.
And then 1-to-1s have the need to reform and perfect others, like their children or their
close relationships.
Their partner, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the self-preservation 1 is what we call the true perfectionist. They're most actively perfectionistic of the 3 of the 1 subtypes. So they tend to worry, feel anxious. There's an excessive sense of responsibility that is usually because of experiences really early in life of taking responsibility, right?
There's a reason why you find them in your practice a lot.
That's right. There's a lot of like history of chaos in the childhood with this one often, and they had to provide the stability. And so they're often the most responsible person in the family and may have been caretaking a parent or 2. So this is the every detail under control.
Right.
Yeah. Which is hard because that's not possible to attain, right? Yeah. So do you know anyone like this?
Yeah, I can think of some people.
Yeah. And so what this can do when you can recognize it is it can bring a lot of compassion, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, oh, their inner critic. Remember, 1s have an inner critic that doesn't like to ever go on vacation.
Right.
And so they're really hard on themselves. Yeah.
Well, and that's the beauty. I think we talked about this in the last episode, but that's the beauty about knowing about the Enneagram and knowing your type and seeing someone else's type is that you can see their shadow. You can see where they're acting from. And so therefore you can have a lot more compassion and empathy for them.
It's a lot easier to see the shadow in someone else, by the way, than in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So with this subtype of the 1, anger is repressed. They're usually warm and gentle people. They turn their anger into warmth. And underneath that warmth, there's a lot of anger, but they try to control it. They're really gentle. Yeah. And they can look a lot like a 6 because they have a lot of anxiety and fear. But the difference is 1s feel confident about the standards of perfection they apply, whereas the 6s are thinking more like from a contrarian place, questioning and doubting. Yeah. So for working on yourself, if you resonate as a self-preservation 1 and right, and repressing anger and perfecting yourself, then it's the wisdom is to try and be a lot less hard on yourself, relaxing the demands of the inner critic that you'll,
you see it come up and you say, oh,
yeah,
there's that inner critic. And then say, all right, inner critic, you go get some ice cream. You're not running the show right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to leave some time for pleasure and play in your life. Yeah.
I'm clearly not a 1.
My little Gemini.
Very clearly.
All right. Now, the social subtype of the 1 is more rigid. So this one is less of a perfectionist and focuses more on being perfect. It wants to know and demonstrate the right way things are being done. So this one will reload your dishwasher and tell you why you're doing it wrong. I've had that happen. We run a lot of trauma retreats in our household, and people who are social ones will often ask me how I load my dishwasher because they're afraid that they're going to get corrected. And I go, I don't have a thing about that. So you can I just appreciate you loading it. And it's like, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I know a lot of those.
So this is a school teacher mentality, has a generalized attitude that says what I do is right, my way is right. Yeah. And they adhere strongly to that, what they see is right, and don't like it when other people don't agree with them. Right. Yeah. So this one can be a little bit cold because the transformation of the heat of anger gets put into cold. It's not completely repressed, but there's a passion for being the owner of the truth and being right and making other people wrong. So they tend to be cooler and more critical and severe in their personality about how things should be.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's tough.
My mom is this one.
Yeah.
There's definitely a right way to do things.
Gam. Sweet little one.
I know. So
that must have been fun to grow up with.
Yeah, she's a mixture of the one-to-one and the social. Yeah. So like we'll get going on politics. Yeah. And there's a right way those politicians should be behaving.
Amen to that, sister.
I know. So social ones can look like 5s, and my mom and my husband get along really well. He's a 5. Because they're separate from the crowd because they're so perfect and they might appear superior.
They both just bask in one another's superiority.
That's right. And we're saying this is the false self. This is not who you are at core. Your true nature is actually unconditional love, right? Yeah. And so each one of these subtypes and Ennea types has its own shadow. So don't hear this, not making fun of one.
Not at all.
Not at all. Ours is
wait until we get to ours.
Coming. So the 1-to-1 is the zeal. It's the counter type of the 1. So it's more of a reformer than a perfectionist. They want to perfect others. So this one is explicitly angry and impatient and can be invasive and goes for what they want and has a sense of entitlement. So they tend to be entitled to the sense of possessing the mentality of a reformer or a zealot, who knows how to live and do things the right way and want to assert that. And that intensity of desire is fueled by anger that motivates them to want to improve others, to make the things, the people, the society be more the way they think they should be. Yeah. So there's a lot of energy around it. Well, I'll tell you what to do, kind of thing. Right. Yeah. And there can be a why can't I attitude regarding that desire. So this is the counter type. They're anti-instinctual because they control their anger because they judge acting on impulse as bad. Right. Yeah. And they can look like an 8 when they express anger because they do it more readily than other ones. A lot of ones don't express anger very well. Yeah. They repress it and get autoimmunity and cancer quite easily. Yeah. A lot of my patients
are there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then let's get to the 2. This hits home for us.
Yes.
We have 3 different kinds of 2s in our family. Regan and Kendall, my daughters, and myself all have different subtypes. So the passion or the vice of
God.
the two is pride. And so that pride will, come out in different ways. It's a lack of humility for being able to read a room and other people.
Yeah.
So the self-preservation to seduce like a child by being cute and pleasing,
And playful and
playful.
I know I'm cringing
Peter
right.
Pan.
I'm cringing right now as you're about to explain this. With the way that
It's
I
your
have been,
self.
with the way that I've been presenting in this podcast. Okay. Continue.
Right. Social to seduce groups through power and confidence.
Mhm.
I
Wow.
don't resemble that.
Through their
Confidence.
intellect.
Through their intellect, yes. And one-to-one to seduce specific individuals into giving them whatever they want. Her sister.
I don't see any of us.
All right. So self-preservation is privilege, and it's the countertype to the two. They seduce in the presence of grown-ups, like a child putting on a play to get what they want, right? So this is an unconscious need to be taken care of. And it comes from the sense that children are naturally lovable and deserve to be loved. So it's kind of a me first, I'm young, therefore I'm most important. And we can see that in our youngest dog. And I think that's been really interesting for you to watch. Every once in a while when we're hiking, she'll go, "Oh my gosh, no wonder Kendall hates me."
God, no wonder my siblings bullied me growing up. Youngest are kind of the worst.
But they're not. And that it's just like birth order and why we are the way we are.
Right.
And then we put the Ennea type in there and, So this one says, I need to be regarded as the center just because I'm me and want to come first. Right. Yeah. And that, a child does need to have their needs met, and that's rightfully so. But the self-pres to learns how to be cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And doesn't look like the very, very adult social two who can be over adulting.
Right.
And feel more like a force. The one-to-one can feel more like a force of nature. Yeah. Okay. So what do you want to talk about this one? Since this is,
I'm reading the social or the self-preservation too can look like a warm 6 or a 4. And that they're more fearful, more ambivalent about relationships and express more emotionally and longing for love. So when I was growing up, my mom thought I was a 4 because I always had this longing as a tween to be in relationship. Yeah. I had like the Disney princess growing up, that story, that fairy tale. And so that's what I wanted. And it was a rude awakening when I got to a certain age and learned that wasn't the reality of life. Yeah, but
and how are you working with your little girl self on that?
what part?
Well, just that, like the rude awakening part. There's some grieving that can happen in there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Obviously it came out sideways for a while in the form of addiction and an eating disorder and suppressing all of those feelings. And the way it came out as a self-preservation too was putting on a happy face, being smiley, sunshine. I was literally called your little sunshine growing up.
By me and your dad.
By both of you.
Yeah.
And so I internalized that on a subconscious level. And so I came up with the meaning behind that was I always had to be happy. I always had to be sunshine. I was never okay. I was never allowed to be not okay. And so, yeah, it's been
in your own mind,
in my own mind. And so it's been, a good lesson of ramming my car into the side of a building and like, all right, it comes out sideways if you're not expressing it. And
clearly I'm not okay.
This is manifesting in certain ways, telling me otherwise.
Yeah.
So now, I feel like I am getting to the bottom of that in a lot of ways. I've been doing a lot of work around it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the social 2, theirs is ambition. And this is a seducer of environments and groups. It's a leader type, often a powerful person, the owner of the company, the person in charge.
Oh,
Hello.
mom. Mom.
Yes. And this is the most obviously proud too, because this person is ambitious, knows the right people, does important things, gets in a position of leadership, and is usually admired.
It's what our society
Yeah.
applauds.
Yep.
Yes.
Highly intelligent. Yeah. Super
Success.
confident.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the one that where it's important to feed the pride in contrast to having somebody's passionate attachment, which is the 1-to-1 too.
Mm-hmm.
So the social two, gives to get the most of the twos. Always has a strategic plan, an angle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To even appear to be giving. This is a really interesting, this is a more civilized adult too, as opposed to the Peter Pan self-pres, right?
Right.
Who's more childlike, and the
Playful.
1-to-1 who's the voluptuous, to also called the Black Widow. So the social two can resemble an 8 or a 3 because they work hard, they get a lot done, and they can often achieve a position of power. So in the social two, it's really important to recognize pride. For a long time, when I first learned the Enneagram, until I was down in Palo Alto going through my 2-year internship, and there was a panel of twos up on the stage and the facilitators were asking questions, I would have never recognized that.
Right.
Never. But when I heard people responding, I got it. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is it was so blatant.
Yeah.
So blatant. And so for about a year, I really stopped being nice. I would question every single motive. And, it's interesting because now when I set things up, I make sure, like our trauma healing journey community, right? That no one's allowed to put me in as the guru. Like everybody learns the same stuff. We practice together, right? That's my due diligence for making sure that never gets fed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then vulnerability. So being able to really get in touch with my own feelings, share them, right? Which is what we do in this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I started doing, writing and things like that, I would just share all of have I told you that I did this one? Or, if anyone starts to try and put me on a pedestal, I immediately will put in, have I told you about this part?
Yeah.
And so, and that's my protection from my own false self in a way.
Yeah.
Right. And it's done with compassion, but it's also, okay, no, please don't feed that. Don't feed the bear.
People, yes, absolutely. People tend to do that with me as well. I've noticed like, oh, you're so playful, or wow, you're so wise for your age. You're so, and then I do the same thing where I'm like, have I told you that I rammed my car to the side of a building while drinking?
Yeah.
No, I'm human. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't feed the bear.
Don't feed the bear. Yeah.
Which that's one of the things I remember using as a practice was, if anyone compliments you and that actually seems to feed your sense of worth,
right,
then when they criticize you, it's going to tear you apart. So neither one of those need to have power. Right.
That's a big practice.
Yeah. Making sure that you already know your worth is at 100%. It's not because of anything you do. Yeah.
Yep.
Letting go of anything that could be ever felt as specialness inside of you. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the 1-to-1 subtype is the seductive one.
The Black Widow.
The Black Widow.
Hi, Kendall.
This one needs to inspire affection or attraction in another person so that they get their needs met. And so this one, it's, as it suggests, this is the archetype of a vampire. They're irresistible, somebody who's very beautiful, but it's kind of a dangerous beauty. And it's a beauty that needs to have a hold on you and might end up sucking you dry or eating you up. Yeah. So the purpose behind this is to solve whatever the problem is that they feel needs to get met. It's the dilemma that they have and don't want to actually talk about it, but they want to form a bond with somebody that will take care of it. So this is the femme fatale,
Mm-hmm.
like Helen of Troy, right? Where wars are fought over her.
Mm.
Yeah. So the life of
Must
a
be
1-1
nice.
2 is a life of falling intensely in love, having extraordinary love affairs, and then suffering greatly if the love affair comes to an end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a wild-hearted, action-oriented 2. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Who's not afraid to woo or pursue others. Pride is not easily recognized as pride in this 2 because it's often satisfied by the loved one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. So this one, the journey for toward wisdom on this and letting go, dropping the false self strategy is developing aspects of the true nature separate from the need to seduce or shapeshift for others. So finding a variety of ways to meet your own needs and more consciously managing energetic connections where there's a giving and a receiving, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maintaining boundaries with self and others. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So hopefully everyone's enjoying this exploration and doesn't get
I know. Cringing.
cringy
Yeah.
because this is just the strategy of a child, right? And once you can really find yourself in the mirror of it and go, oh, okay,
Yeah.
so I can let that go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's when change can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're on to the Enneatype 3, and these subtypes are really different from each other. Okay. The 6s, the 4s, and the 3s are all really, really different from each other. And their passion is deceit. So it's used in a variety of ways to keep the image that they want to be seen as. So a self-preservation 3 is efficient, autonomous, workaholic in the service of security. And they go against vanity by trying to be good. Then social 3s express vanity by wanting to be recognized on the social stage. So they create and achieve and sell a polished image. And then a 1-1 3 is a charismatic pleaser who focuses on vanity and achievement and being appealing and supporting others. So the self-preservation is the counter type. And this one has vanity for not having vanity.
Right. I'm amazing because I'm not vain.
Right. Yeah. And like the other 3s, they want others to view them as attractive and successful, but they don't want anyone to know that they want this. So they don't actively advertise their positive qualities like the other 2 types will. Yeah. They're very, very determined to be a good person, to follow the perfect model of how a person should be, whether it's the good mother, the good father, the good worker, the good wife, the good husband. Yeah. So it implies virtue, right?
Right. So like the one is driven by wanting to be the perfect person. And then this is driven by wanting to be a good person.
And the
Wanting to be
perfect.
the best person.
Yeah. And the image of that. Right? Yeah.
Mhm.
So this one is anti-deception because they try to tell the truth. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's on a more unconscious level, anti-deception. Yeah. So they have a little bit of self-deception and knowing what their true motivations are. And they can get confused about their image-based reasons for doing things versus their real feelings.
Okay.
Yeah. So the workaholic tendency comes from wanting to have security.
Right.
Yeah. So they work to maintain and create relationships, but they might have trouble making deep connections.
Yeah.
Yeah. They might be a little more superficial. Yeah. Okay. So in working on themselves, they can benefit from slowing down and making room for experiencing and expressing real feelings. So that means finding those, right? Allowing for a space inside for emotions and deeper needs to actually be felt in.
Right. And in our trauma healing community, I mean, we don't really see many 3s coming in. We don't really see 3s or 7s because we'll get to 7s later, but on working on themselves, they can get more in touch with those deeper feelings. Threes, the shadow side is that it's like near impossible for them to really get in touch with those feelings.
It's not impossible, but they have to know that
It needs to be
there
worked
has to
on.
be a willingness. Yeah. And the 3 is celebrated,
Yeah,
right? The productivity of our culture. What is there to work on?
exactly.
Yeah.
They're kind of making it.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And so the social subtype of the 3 is prestige. And this is a desire to be seen and have influence with people. They want to shine in front of the whole world and they love a stage. So this is the more 3ist of the 3s.
Mm.
Yeah. Whenever anyone talks about a 3, this is like the archetype of an Ennea type 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they want admiration. They want applause. They want to be recognized and admired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so this 3 has a corporate mentality and a passion for doing the job the best way it can be done.
This is a lot of CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they may feel a lot of anxiety if they get exposed in vulnerability.
Mm.
Yeah. They want to keep a distance. They want to be seen positively.
Mm-hmm.
Fear that people might see through their image. There's a lot of what is that word I teach all the time that I just lost?
I don't know.
Where you're afraid that people are going to see through. It'll come.
Huh.
I just lost it. Welcome to menopause.
And if you weren't getting underneath your social tunus, that would have been awful for you.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's
So well done.
yeah.
It's okay to lose. It's okay to lose words sometimes.
Lost a word and it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to be intelligent.
You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So criticism can be really hard on this one.
Mm.
Yeah. On this type of 3, because the value is in making a good impression. So with a 3, oftentimes they'll be like, what should we wear?
Mm-hmm.
What should I be bringing? What exactly? Like, what are the parameters, right? So in the working on themselves, they want to benefit from recognizing and observing the difference between their image and their real self, especially real feelings.
Right.
And learning that the image isn't superior or more lovable, than their real self.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so imposter syndrome was the word I was looking for.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the imposter syndrome.
It came eventually.
It came eventually.
You're so smart, Mom.
No, don't do that. It's a moment in time that I just tagged and said, "Oh, you haven't been using your progesterone at night."
Right.
There's dropping words. That's how I know. Okay, so the 1-to-1 subtype, masculine, feminine balance, the victory or goal that the 1-to-1 subtype as a 3 is interested in is sex appeal and beauty, rather than money or prestige. That they're just as competitive, right, but they want that sex appeal. So they tend to achieve in support of someone else. This can be arm candy, right? Yeah. Yeah, they don't wear a social mask that the social 3 wears. The 1-to-1 3 is the most emotional of the 3s. So you're more likely to see them expressing their feelings. Yeah. They often don't seem like a 3 because they're not so focused on their own status. It's more about being attractive and supporting others. So it's enough for them to be beautiful. They don't have to achieve to get love.
Got it.
It's the pleasing, right, that brings approval. Yeah. So they can look like a 2 because of this, or a 7, and could be mistaken for a 7 because they tend to be very positive and enthusiastic and supportive of others. They can be really excellent cheerleaders. So this type can benefit from really observing the focus on pleasing others and wanting to be seen as attractive and relaxing that to make more room for their real needs. Yeah. Yep.
All right. I don't know many 3s.
I do.
All of them have left my life.
I know a lot in my
in
my work
your
space.
world. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay, so type 4 subtypes. These also are very, very striking in how different they are. So that all of them their passion is envy. And it's all comes out in a different way. So self-preservation fours are long suffering and they internalize to some extent denying it, their suffering.
Mm.
And then social fours suffer by living in it so much and wearing it on their sleeve. And then 1-to-1 fours make others suffer by projecting it out so that it gets rid of their painful sense of lack and, and inferiority that they projected onto others. So self-pres is the counter type, and this one expresses suffering less than the other two, but they're a long-suffering person. They've learned to feel pain without wincing and tend to bear a lot in terms of too much suffering, how they're pursuing. They demand a lot of themselves. And there's a strong need to endure. So they develop an ability to do without, to put themselves in tough situations so that they can challenge themselves.
Interesting.
We might know a couple of people like
Gosh, yeah.
The other 2 fours are very, very sensitive to frustration. So they make you suffer when they're suffering, where this one isn't like this. Yeah. Envy is less apparent in the self-pres 4, challenges them to work harder to get what others have that they lack. And they don't share their pain as much with others. And they tend to be really humanitarian people with very empathic, nurturing dispositions.
Yeah, we have a couple
that we love so
love
much.
them.
I think I have 4.
Wow.
Yeah, self-pres 4s that I love and adore. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. So this type often is called the sunny 4 and can look like a 7 also. So they can benefit from sharing and communicating about their feelings and allowing for lightness and fun and kind of going easy on themselves. Yeah.
My 4 is getting to the bottom of their stuff. I'm really pleased with them. I was going to say I'm really proud of them, but then I was like, we don't do that in this family anymore.
Well, there's some ownership in there, though. You're 4, so like your purse.
Well, they belong to me. So yeah,
my 4.
The 4 in my life. How about that? Is that better?
Yeah. Oh, I have a couple of very best friends that are this type of 4, and oh man, they also are doing really good work on self-introspection.
Yeah.
All right. So the social subtype, their vice is shame. And they appear emotionally sensitive and have been told they're oversensitive for a good part of their lives. And they feel things very, very deeply. They suffer more than most people and they lament a lot. And so they can fall into a victim role. So there's a sharp contrast between the 1-to-1 4, which is called the mad 4, and the sad social 4. The 1-to-1 complains and is explicitly demanding, and the social 4 is too shy to express desires. So, yeah. So there's a sense of comfort and familiarity in suffering. Instead of doing something about it, they depend a lot on fulfilling other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know some of these too.
Yeah. So there's also some inferiority in there, like a need for self-abasement and self-recrimination, turning against oneself. Yeah. Comparing self to other and winding up in a lower position. Yeah. Social 4 is timid, doesn't feel free to manifest their wants and wishes, ashamed of sexuality and anger, strong sense of shame about their wants and needs. So the 1-to-1 4 is more shameless, and this one is very, very shameful. Yeah. A social 4 is non-competitive. And so in working on themselves, they can benefit from observing and working on their inferiority complex, making efforts to be more confident, understand their own worth, relax the self-judgment. Yeah. We want to give a shout out to our lovely friends that have this false self.
Yeah.
We love you.
It's just false.
It's just false.
We love you.
It's not who you are. Yes. All right. The 1-to-1 subtype is competitive. It's more assertive and angrier than the social 4. It can be very outspoken in their anger as a way of defending themselves against painful feelings. their pain turns into anger, and then it's not felt as pain anymore. So they make others suffer. There's an active insistence that their needs be validated and met, and they can seek to hurt or punish others as an unconscious way of minimizing their own pain. Yeah. So the inner motivation is envy, but it manifests as competition. So they don't feel envious if they're competitive.
Right.
Yeah.
They're doing something.
Right. So they believe it's good to be best, superior, and have to leave behind the niceness for this.
And it comes from a space of envy. So we've said a few of these subtypes want to be the best. So it's really reflecting on where it's stemming from, where that desire to be the best is stemming from, what it's rooted in.
Yes.
And so here it's rooted in envy.
Right.
Yeah.
So in working on themselves, they can benefit from strengthening their ability to be with their own suffering without projecting it out onto others. And then, by working to get in touch with the feelings that are underneath their anger, because anger is always that hard crust that covers over something that's more tender, right? Yeah. All right. So we're at the 5s now. All right. These are kind of similar to each other. They're more alike than any of the other Enneagram types. They're all of them are the passion of avarice. So they correspond with a tendency to minimize their needs and their connections with others to protect their resources. Yeah.
My stepdad.
We have a 5 we love so much. So the self-preservation 5 has a passion for sanctuary. There's a need to be hidden in their sanctuary. Yeah.
He lives on an island.
He lives on an island by himself right now.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So the renunciates of the world are often this kind of 5. They want a special place of safety to avoid feeling lost in the world. And they're the least communicative of all of the 3 subtypes. So they benefit from relaxing boundaries more often, making efforts to connect with feelings, especially anger, and other people, even when it creates discomfort in themselves. The social subtype of the 5 is totem. And this one is really interesting, this word totem. And I only recognized it after being married to a JN for so many years. The toteming of people in your life in terms of who's most important and who's least important.
Oh, interesting.
Because their passion of avarice is around knowledge. So it's like, who has the greatest credentials?
Oh, interesting.
Is the highest on the totem pole. Yeah. So they don't need a lot from relationships because knowledge compensates. And it's, they have this super idealization for people that meet their idealized way of, that much, the kind of knowledge that they want. So they can become too spiritual or idealistic in a way that's counter to real spiritual attainment because it bypasses compassion and empathy.
Oh, whoa.
No comment.
No
Okay,
comment.
so we have somebody.
Oh my gosh.
1-to-1 subtype is confidence. This is the counter type of the 5s. And this is my lovely husband, a 1-to-1. I'm the 1-to-1 if I'm in the room with him. And then his daughter will be the 1-to-1 if she is, or his sister if she is.
He's giving me all of these subtypes.
I know.
Yeah.
We're a mixture of all of them.
Yeah.
The 3-5 subtypes are the most intertwined with each other. So they are intense and romantic and more emotionally sensitive. And they resemble more of a 4 and have more desires. They can be really passionate about one person and sometimes a person that they can't even find. They seek the ultimate mystical union of the divine human relationship. Yeah. So the name given to the subtype is confidence because they learn how to trust looking for this other person. Trust that they can tell their secrets and have them safe with them. Yeah. All right. So now we're on to the 6s. And the vice is fear.
Right.
Yeah. And the 3 subtypes will come out in different ways with fear. Like the self-pres 6 is warm, sometimes known as the affectionate 6. They'll look like a 2. A social 6 is cool or cold, and they're the obedient 6s. I call them the neurotic ones, like Woody Allen, right? And then 1-to-1 6s are hot, and they're called aggressive. They're what we call the counterphobic 6s. So these guys are all very different from each other
Yeah,
too.
very different.
Yeah. So the warm 6 is fear of not being protected. So they're really nice, right, to people with the idea that if I'm nice to you, that you'll help keep me safe.
Right.
And so they look a lot like 2s, because 2s are also nice for a very specific reason, but it's more for connection rather than security.
Right.
So that's why knowing your motivation is helpful
Yeah.
when you're determining where your false self lies in the Enneagram.
But 2s, they find connection. They find security in connection.
They do.
So
Yeah, I know. So there's indecision and uncertainty in this type. 2s tend to not be uncertain and indecisive.
right.
Yeah.
That's true.
They ask a lot of questions, but they don't answer any.
Right.
Yeah. So their driving need is for something like friendship and warmth, which makes them, not angry. Yeah. They don't, this one is an ambiguous person, kind of wishy-washy, who doesn't want to say that this is black or white, seeing a lot of gray. They have a difficult time making decisions. I used to say my husband has a strong 6 wing. And after a little while, after we were married, I would say, okay, do all of I would call it quaffling, when we would go look for something that we needed to buy together, like a computer printer or just whatever.
Yeah.
And I would do research ahead of time and then go in and go, that's the one, come home. And he loves walking through the entire store, bringing up what's wrong, what's good, doing the pros and cons. It would just drive me bonkers. And so there's a definite difference between.
Yeah. Big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So having the courage to state your opinion and your preference instead of being vague is one of the things that you work on. Yeah. Need to risk being bad and getting angry and becoming more confident. Yeah.
We're seeing 6s a lot more in our society these days too.
Yeah. There's a lot, 6s, like, I'm not sure if the world that I step on will be there when I take my next step. And that's with the pandemic, like, there's a lot of chaos out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the social 6, duty is their word, and it doesn't mean so much that they do their duty as they're concerned with duty. They feel a need to know the rules and the point of reference, what the guideline is, what's the party line, who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. So they represent a mixture of that phobic and counterphobic between the two. They're precise, right? They're cooler than the warm 6. Yeah. So the archetype is sometimes like what you see in the movies of a German soldier or something.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So that precision makes a lot of this kind of 6 become like engineers.
Okay.
Of different kinds. Yeah. Yeah. Because they're trying to understand the system. So they're always concerned with efficiency, a little bit of legalistic stuff. Yeah. So in working on themselves, they can benefit from learning to act more from an instinct and intuition rather than like duty. So a little bit more pleasure in life rather than having to follow every single ideological rule.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then the 1-to-1 is the counter type. It's called strength and beauty. It's the most counterphobic of the 6. And it turns against fear with strength. So they can sometimes be quite intimidating. Yeah, they have an inner program that when you're afraid, the best defense is an attack. Yeah. So this is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If you're in relationship with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They appear strong, so they won't be attacked. And then so anxiety is really having this readiness to face an attack. So they'll often project that they're being attacked and then attack. Right. Yeah.
And so we'll get to the 8. The 8 is also, it's kind of an overpowering type typically. And so the difference though, and we'll talk about where the 8 stems from, but this is stemming from anxiety. The anxiety about being hurt, about getting
Not being
resources taken, not being
understood.
understood. And so then being the first one to throw a punch.
Yeah. This is the one that likes to jump out of helicopters with snowboards into crazy places, you know, hella skiing and
You think I'm scared? I'm not scared.
right.
Yeah.
Evil Knievel is counterphobic 6.
Yeah.
So they are a risk taker, crazy rebel, kind of be a madman or a madwoman, an adrenaline junkie, troublemaker, right? So, you know, as opposed to the other types of 6 who often back down from threat.
Yeah.
This one moves towards risky situations and feels safer confronting danger rather than hiding it from it. And it can look like an 8, like you were just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they benefit from learning to allow themselves to be disarmed, to be vulnerable. Courage is not as relevant when you know that you're already courageous, right? Yeah. Okay, so now we're to the 7s. Okay, so this is gluttony is the passion. Self-preservation 7s find security through the gluttonous search for pleasure. And social 7s express anti-gluttony by being in service of others. So they're the counter type. And then 1-to-1 7s channel gluttony into an idealistic search for the ultimate relationship and the very best imaginable experiences. We have a couple of beautiful friends that are 7s too.
You do.
Oh, so beautiful. So self-preservation 7s. And I also think like 7s sometimes they're not motivated to change their strategy.
I mean, I wouldn't want to.
Because it's a lot of fun, but then it can get them in trouble inside of relationships, work.
It's harder to make deeper, meaningful relationships as a 7 for sure. When there's conflict. 7s don't do conflict
very well. Yeah. So the self-preservation 7 is the keeper of the castle. They're very practical, good at getting what they want, finding a good deal. They're very opportunistic, self-interested, calculating, good at networking. So they recognize opportunities for creating an advantage. So their gluttony is an excessive concern to make a good deal at every opportunity. They're cheerful and amiable. They can be sort of hedonistic, and they want to, you know, the self-pres 7 and the 1-to-1 7 are very opposite ends, very polar opposite. So this one, the 1-to-1 7 is much of a dreamer, and a self-pres 7 is more materialistic and pragmatic. Yeah. All right. So in working on themselves, they can observe a dawning self-interested motivation and the opportunistic tendency, and notice how these traits impact relationships and their larger goals. So getting in touch with any feelings that might be underneath those tendencies, right? Yeah. All right. Then social subtype is sacrifice. This is the counter type. So they're a pure character. They express counter gluttony, and their tendency towards gluttony is defining themselves as anti-gluttons.
Interesting.
Yeah. Non-conforming conformists.
Right.
Yeah. So the social subtype is, as the counter type, wants to avoid being excessive and wants to be good. And it has more of an aesthetic kind of 5-ish ideal. Yeah. They make a virtue of getting by on less, just like 5s do. Yeah. Part of their personality strategy is that they want to be seen as sacrificing, self-sacrificing, and crave being seen as a good person.
And where is that rooted from?
Which can look like a 2.
Right. Where's that rooted from for a 7 though?
Well, don't you think it would happen as a result of what the positive reinforcement was from, or negative reinforcement from a caregiver? Right?
I know, but what I'm asking is what would make it different than a 2?
Oh, a 2?
Yeah.
Because the 2 is on the Enneagram, we have head types, body types, and heart types. So the 2 has a lot more of what I call the tar pit. And so their niceness, it's like their feet are in tar, so that when they take a step forward, they're making a tarry imprint on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So their niceness is to get something back,
Right.
right? Whereas with the 7, it's going to be about virtue signaling for the image of the headspace, right? So there's not as much emotional connectivity in it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So twos will want you to caretake them emotionally
Right.
when they're kind. 7s don't.
Right.
Yeah. And it's very much about the image. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I thought I was a 7 for a while, right? Because these look very much like
Very
each
similar.
other, but I had more of that emotional pride.
Yeah.
Or
You and me both, sister.
crying when my strategy didn't work. 7s don't do that. All right. So the 1-to-1 subtype of the 7 is suggestibility. This is a dreamer, a need to imagine something better than the stark ordinary reality of life. So this is a lighthearted. This is our lovely friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they tend to look at things with optimism of somebody who's in love. They take refuge in this positive experience as a way of unconsciously avoiding deeper emotions that they might think of as negative or unpleasant. Yeah. A need for fantasizing, a need for rose-colored glasses. They almost too happy, avoid emotional pain. There's an overcompensation to deny painful feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of my friends too.
Yeah. So in working on themselves, they can notice when they're living in their imagination as opposed to reality, and why, the tendency to embellish and idealize helps them, and maybe explore the feelings that are being hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So type 8, lust is the vice, the passion. And a self-pres 8 goes for what's needed to survive in a very lusty, powerful way. Yeah. Social 8s have the need to protect others and go up against those who are committing injustices. These are all the superheroes, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
They are all built off this archetype.
Totally.
1-to-1 8s are passionate and charismatic characters who go against social conventions in a very provocative way. So a lot of judges, police officers, the Justice League
Yeah.
are 8s, right? All right. So self-preservation 8, satisfaction is what they're up for. And they express a strong need to get what's theirs, to get what they need for survival. So the satisfaction title means that this person has a strong desire for the timely satisfaction of their material needs and a big intolerance for frustration. So they're very direct, right? Yeah. Can be intimidating. So, sometimes people are afraid of 8s because they're so direct. And this one who's trying to get what they want, there's no nonsense, no pretense, no wordplay. So that it's like, other Ennea types who are very into that will sometimes be very triggered by an 8, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very overpowering energy.
Yeah. So self-pres 8s are people, they survive in the most difficult situations and they know how to get what they want from other people. Yeah. Yeah.
They might look like a 5 also.
Because they don't like to be vulnerable and they can be very armed and protected. Yeah. But they'll have bigger energy than a 5.
Yeah.
So in working on themselves, they can benefit from learning to allow for a wider range of feelings, especially vulnerable ones. And in their relationships, trust that somebody can hold that for them. Yeah.
Yeah, we see a couple of these in our circle.
We do. And they're just so amazing.
So lovely.
Yeah. The social subtype, 8s are, I think there are more male 8s and more female 2s.
Yeah.
But then that will also, there are also a lot of female 8s And they always say like the male too is the
It's a
unicorn.
unicorn.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I believe our culture supports men
Being eights.
being eights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely doesn't support
Protective.
that. Does not support them being twos.
No. Yeah. So the social 8 is the counter type, and they represent a contradiction. They're a rebellious person who goes against social norms, but they're also oriented toward protection and loyalty.
Mm.
Yeah. So they will express aggression in the service of others.
Mm.
Yeah.
They're
They're
just kind of like people in the military.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They want to, this is the helpful 8,
Yeah.
right? Who wants to stand up for people that have been victims of injustice.
Mhm.
So they represent the child who became tough and protecting mom against an abusive father.
Mm.
Yeah. And goes against the patriarchal power,
Mm.
right, in adulthood. So they're very sensitive to detecting situations where some people are being persecuted.
Mm.
So it's thought that Karl Marx was likely a social 8. He created a whole government system to protect everyone,
Mm.
Yeah. So if you become a protector at too young of an age when you're actually supposed to be being protected, then you can lose consciousness of your own needs for love and care. So sometimes
Mhm.
it's hard for an 8 to make love needs conscious,
Mm.
right? Yeah. So this 8 is a little bit more mellow and friendly, less quick to anger than the other 8s. Their rebellion will happen in more subtle ways. So they, just like all of the other Ennea types, really need to learn how to protect their little one,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Consciously protecting their inner child, loving on their inner child. Yeah.
Mhm.
And revealing their inner child.
Yeah. Eights have a hard time revealing
Yeah.
their inner child.
Oh, we're thinking of our same 8 who
Mhm.
we know his inner child really well. It's so sweet.
Yeah.
And
It
then,
took a while for his inner child to come out, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the 1-to-1 subtype, possession is the title. This is the most rebellious of the 8s and the most emotional. They have a very strong antisocial tendency. They're very provocative and more outspoken. They like to be seen as bad.
Unlike a lot of the other types.
So this is the bad bone, right? Probably, I mean, motorcycle gangs
Yeah.
and yeah.
They
Yeah.
encourage it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they want to get people's attention. They can be charismatic. Their power comes through a kind of seductiveness and an intensity. And yeah, they have more colors in their feathers.
Yeah.
And have a lot of passion. And that can get expressed through anger, but also vulnerability, unlike some of the other 8s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they are not usually mistaken for other types.
Yeah.
So again, like exploring their own vulnerability is how they work on themselves.
Mm.
All right, we're to the last one, the 9s.
We made it.
Yeah, the mediators of the group. And the 3 9 subtypes all express a need for fusion in the service of the passion of sloth. The sloth is the kind of mascot for our plant medicine journey group. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh God, I love my sloth. His name is Marcel.
Yeah. So a self-preservation 9 fuses with their own bodies or physical comforts. Social 9s fuse with the group. 1-to-1 9s fuse with one other person. So self-preservation 9, it's appetite. Appetite, not so much about eating, is about the need to find protection through the comfort of merging with an experience, with physical needs being satisfied. So they can be self-forgetting. They go to sleep to their own needs or wants by constantly reading others, right? Can be safer to hide out in the comfort of a familiar routine than to have to show up and risk potential conflict or overstimulation. So it's easier to erase yourself through comfortable activities than to show up and not know how things are going to go, right?
And this is the type that is most prone to addiction.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They're more irritable, somewhat stronger presence than the other two nines, and can experience inertia by not taking action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They tend to want more alone time than the other two nines do. Distinctive sense of humor. Self-deprecating. So in working on themselves, they can benefit from making more conscious contact with their anger. Nines don't think it's okay to be angry.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
They like to ostrich, head in sand, and find ways to numb out. So,
Yeah.
yes.
The air of everything is good. Everything's
Right.
happy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We have another 9 that we love. We have several 9s in our lives.
We do.
Yeah. The 9 is the most common Ennea type, by the way.
Mm.
Her dad is a 9.
Fascinating.
Your brother is a 9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My oldest son.
Beautiful men.
Beautiful men. All right. So then the social 9 is the counter type. And these guys are super congenial and need to feel a part of things and experience feeling different or not fitting into the group or community. They're lighthearted and really, really want to be a part of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The underlying experience of not belonging to the group drives the social 9 to overcompensate by being generous and sacrificing to meet the needs of the group.
Mm.
And they can be workaholics.
Mm.
Yeah. Generous, unselfish, mindful of the group, gifted in satisfying the needs of others to the point where they self-sacrifice. So in plant medicine community, we're always telling our 9s to ask for what they need, and
to receive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That they don't have to take care of everyone else to be a part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're really good mediators, see things from all sides, very good leaders. So working on themselves, they need to get in touch with sadness about where they don't fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's underneath that upbeat demeanor.
Yeah.
If there's pain underneath it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the 1-to-1 subtype is fusion. They have a need to be through another to gain a sense of being. So this is where, like, Robin to Batman.
Okay.
Yeah. I only have an identity because I'm the sidekick of Batman.
Right.
Yeah. So this subtype, really exemplifies the use of relationship to feed own sense of self. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's really painful to be on your own.
Right.
Yeah. So we know that in order to have true sense of core value and worth, that you have to be 2 pillars that are strong and not dependent. And so, working on themselves, this type of 9 needs to learn about, like, what is their own sense of being without having it reflected from another.
Yeah. Interdependence.
Right. They're really kind and gentle and tender and sweet and the least assertive of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's important not to just find being through community, but in that sense of self.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did it.
We did it.
Wow.
You did it. Well done, Mom.
Wow.
Well done. You're such a pro.
So hopefully you've been able to find yourself sometimes in the discussion of the Enneagram. If people say, well, I took the quiz, which, by the way, not a great way to find your Ennea type. I mean, it is.
I know it's not. No.
And 3 came up for me. There are 3 different Ennea types. I'm not sure which one. Really diving into the subtypes is a great way of distinguishing. Because remember, this is your false self. It's not your true nature. And the reason that you want to discover it is so that you can say, like on the trail map, you are here. Here's where you're going. But unless you know where you are, you don't know how to get there.
Right.
And it'll be a lot of unconscious behavior that's happening that keeps you stuck if you're not aware.
Right.
So, yeah.
And all the subtypes are pretty vastly different from each other. So, yeah, just diving in deeper is so helpful.
It's always very uncomfortable when you land on your subtype. It's like, ooh.
You'll know. Yeah, you'll know it's you.
You won't like it.
You won't like it.
Yeah.
God, yeah. When I landed on mine, I was like, Are you sure? No, I think I'm a social too. Definitely a social too. I'm not the Peter Pan.
And then if there's one that you took a quiz on and you really like that one,
Yeah.
then that's not your false self.
Yep.
It's one that makes you cringe.
Yep.
All right. Well, in the journey of liberating self from patterns of behavior created in response to trauma, the Enneagram is one pathway through. Super helpful.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. So enjoy the journey, everybody.
Enjoy the journey.
Till next time.